So it is Black History Month, but one of the reasons why we need it is because of white women. So I'm gonna give a little history lesson about the people who took away Black history from so many U.S. Americans. The Daughters of the Confederacy. Look at these ladies. We can thank them and the 100,000 women that were a part of this group who willfully made generations of U.S. Americans completely ignorant about the actual history of the United States. Now, I highly encourage you to spend February reading Black history if you're not already. And one of the very first books that radicalized me was when I was a history major in college was this one. This is by Angela Davis. Gives you a whole lot of history. There's plenty of other ones. I will try to remember to put them on this video. Because if you follow my page, you're probably a feminist. But if you don't understand the way race and class and all of the capitalism and transphobia, anti-trans legislation right now, ableism and all this stuff is so tied up to this stuff, then stick around. I talk about this a lot or infuse it through my video. I'm not the only person talking about it, for sure. Another great place to start is They Were Her Property, especially if you're new to this. But one of the things that, if you want to understand what's happening right now in the United States, you have to understand the history. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of our history because of this very successful movement to rewrite history, literally lie about it. I mean, you can tell a story by leaving things out, and you can lie through omission, or you can also do that and outright lie, which is what the Daughters of the Confederacy made sure to do and spent all their efforts doing, and they did it. So this article in the New York Times, I'm gonna go into buckle in, we're gonna have a little history lesson today. And even though this is Black History Month, there are so many people who are gonna teach Black history way better than me. So they deserve your watch hours and the money they might get from that. So I thought, you know what? I should do a history lesson on my people contributing or being behind this anti-intellectualism and literally the myth of the United States. It's not just us, but let me tell you something. These Russians were so awful. Look what they did. Now, if you're new here, I am a journalist and a storyteller and all these other things. Please join my Patreon if you like my work. That's how I get paid doing this. I have lives. I have a live on Sunday, the February 2nd. With Evan the bioethicist, and we're going to talk about all of this stuff and how history and misinformation and disinformation is a huge public health crisis and all kinds of cool stuff. And also, if you're new here, I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, where apparently these bitches started this. I learned so much doing my research for this story. While I do not want to put a focus on white people during Black History Month, I kind of feel like our role in silencing Black history might be something to consider and maybe motivate you to all the more to learn Black history. Because this is why we are where we are, is because of this very intentional plan and energy and money and effort and time that a lot of white women, and they're continuing to do it, by the way, with the Moms for Liberty, or where the hell that group is, all the white women on school boards who are getting books banned. They are the modern day Daughters of the Confederacy. So let's start pushing back against them if you're not already locally doing that. But if we don't understand how we got where we are, or how January 6th happened, or why things are so crazy right now, one of the reasons because we don't know our history. We don't know our history. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, but this New York Times article written in 2017 gives a really good summary of how a lot of people, when they think of the Daughters of Confederacy, which a lot of people didn't realize this until they started taking down these monuments, as to how the hell they even got up there. They haven't even been up that long. And then it was the Daughters of the Confederacy behind it. But what people don't maybe know as much of is that that was just one of the things they did. They did much worse things. In fact, what actually made me change my degree from social work, which I was like, I'm too messed up to help anybody, to history, was when I was at the University of Montana. So I had to learn all this out of the South, because even though that they started to replace some of these textbooks that were used in schools, all my history professors teachers, and they're usually the football coach, by the way, all of them were talking to me about like states' rights. They were not teaching me about the brutality of slavery. They weren't teaching me about, I'm whispering these because I don't know how much I can talk about this without getting this demonetized or censored or whatever. I was taught the most messed up version of Southern history. So it took me leaving the South, and then I changed to a history degree after I took a class called History of the South, and another class called like Southern Women's History, where I wasn't learning about just white people, how great we are. I was learning about how awful we have been, and that my ancestors were terrorists, and what we were doing. And those two classes, I changed my major to history like the worst time. It was like not a smart decision, but it was the best decision I ever made. It changed me as a person because I didn't understand why I am the way I am. Where's all this stuff where did all this come from? Why did my family say the things they say or do the things what is all this about? I had to learn my history, much like any adult who wants to understand why they operate the way they do and they move through the world the way they do. A lot of times we have to go back to our childhood and understand what happened to us in our childhood. As a country and as a collective, a lot of white people, we do not know our history. And it was withheld from us, but then we also don't seek it out because of shame and all this other stuff. And if you don't know your history, you're not going to understand who you are. You're just not. You're not going to understand who you are, how you're indoctrinated, who taught you this, why they taught you this. So you're not going to question the things that you're doing now, or the things that you might think or catch yourself doing, or your reactions to things, because you don't understand where it came from. So, as much as I think therapy and dealing with your childhood is a personal journey, it's a collective history. It's like going to therapy. But the true history, not the crap that they are teaching us. And right now, they are literally scrubbing history. Like right now, you got to follow public historians. You got to follow people who actually have, because they're gonna wipe all this out. Buy books, download stuff to an external hard drive. But let's jump into the history that maybe you don't know about, maybe you do, because we can't move forward till we deal with the past. So this article talks about how people think about these monuments when they think of the Daughters of the Revolution, but what they have missed and what most Americans need to know is that was just one part of the Daughters of the Confederacy's agenda. What started out and founded in Nashville by white women, there were 30 women who attended the first one. Within 10 years, they had 30,000. By World War I, they had 100,000 white women engaged in this fight to preserve and perpetuate the myths that the Confederate cause was just an honorable one about states' rights, not about slavery. And it was a call to arms. And of course, this group of white ladies was made up a bunch of rich ones, elitist ones. They were usually married to or related to politicians and men with power across the South. They were related to men in legislation, local governments, every area of politics. They were tied to those people. So they had an enormous amount of influence on the policies and what was happening with politics, because they are like lobbyists, basically. These relationships were key to achieving their objective. They sought to collect and preserve the artifacts of war as well as archival material, which they believed would help the truthful history of the Confederacy. They lobbied members of their state legislature, men they knew personally, right, to provide Confederate veterans with military pensions, making sure they're taken care of. And they helped establish the Confederate soldiers and widows' homes throughout the region. But their primary objective was to install Southern white youth's reverence for Confederate principles. White supremacy. Indeed, they regarded their efforts to educate children as their most important work, as they sought, in their own words, to build the living monument who would grow up to defend states' rights and white supremacy. That was literally their goal, and they succeeded. So they had a multi-pronged approach to educating white children about the truth of the war between the states. They developed lesson plans for teachers, a number of whom were members of the organization. They placed pro-Confederate books in schools and public libraries, which they insisted students use when they competed in the essay contest. They led students in celebration of Robert E. Lee's life and birthday, and placed portraits of Confederate heroes with battle flags in classrooms across the South, even in some schools outside the region. Now, actually, one of my moderators, Erica, who grew up in California. Hi, Erica. She told me she was taught a lot of this stuff. So it wasn't like I thought it was just kids in the South that were indoctrinated with like all this. It seems like a lot of this misinformation and just straight up lies and just whitewashing of history was actually like it reached further. I don't know how, but I do know that there is there's a whole, this stuff had a lasting effect because my teachers grew up with this. So even though allegedly or supposedly a lot of these textbooks were not in the schools after like the 70s or something, I'm pretty sure they were, because I was learning this stuff. I was absolutely learning this stuff. And that's why I'm making this video. It makes me so mad. They robbed me of the truth. These ladies robbed me of the truth because just like the people say right now, we don't want kids to feel bad. So they're never going to understand themselves or their family or their where they live, what's happening, because they don't want people to feel bad. Yeah. That's not what that's about. But you know what? Things that make me mad motivate me. So that's why I'm making this video, because when I realized when I changed my major to history, and I focused a lot on the US, but not just, I also studied, all these, the CIA's role in Central and South America. I was studying a lot of stuff. I took some Middle Eastern classes, history classes, and I was like, oh my God. And I started to realize, holy crap, we're the villain. We're the villain of like most of the global South's villain for sure. Ah! And then I was like, well, of course we are though, because look what we did first. Genocide, chattel slavery. Of course, if we do this to our own people, of course we're going to do this abroad. When I say we, I mean the government and all this stuff, but like they've made it but it's not just the government. This is people in the system holding it up. And white women, we have a big responsibility for patriarchy continuing, because you cannot dismantle the patriarchal system without dealing with all the other stuff. Our history, but like all of the other systems, you can't just have one. You have to deal with all of it or none of it. That's why we can't get anywhere, because we keep holding everyone back, because we're like, but I don't want to deal with that part. Deal with it. It's so liberating. You feel bad for a minute and then you move on. God. Anyway, join me, please. I see I'm unhinged right now, but I'm connected with my humanity by doing this stuff. So let's go back to history. Sorry for that little side note. They also formed children. I forgot about this part of the Confederacy. Chapter for boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 16. Muz is awake. Hi, Muz. His little dead eye. Look at this. Sons of Confederate, like whatever. They're like, hey, let's just have a bunch of groups all doing this. And basically the point was to like teach generations of children who are then going to go on to teach their children, and who are then going to go to storm the Capitol and stuff like, and vote for this administration. That the Civil War was about the disregard on the part of the states of the North for the rights of Southern. Oh, there he does. He does his little rotisserie chicken. And that they took away the right to regulate their own affairs. They took away Southern people's consent. So that's the way they just flip everything, y'all. There were also questions and answers that led children to believe that slavery was a benevolent institution in which cruel masters were rare. They were mostly just super nice, and they were actually helping. They're helping. They're doing black people a favor. School textbooks were, of course, monitored by local and state boards for truthfulness. And the Daughters of Considered Historians wrote their own booklets of facts. So literally, what we're seeing right now is history repeating itself, which it always does when you don't know it. When you don't know your history, you're going to wonder, why can't we break out of this cycle of violence? It doesn't until you realize, like in your own personal life with your family history, if you don't look at your family history, you will never get out of that cycle of violence. And as a country, if we don't deal with our history, the true history, not the winner's version, we're never getting out of this hellhole. By the way, Therese Lee made a video recently. If you're not following her, she's one of my mutuals and a friend of mine. And she did a video about this that motivated me to do more of this. So please go watch her original video. She does amazing deep dive. And the one she did the other day was like included so much more. This one here that I'm doing is very focused on just this. So Mildred Rutherford, Millie from Athens, wrote a lot of these booklets criticizing Lincoln. She mailed them to both black and white public schools, requesting that they be used. Yeah, the audacity of sending this crap to a black public school and being like, you really should read this. And then this lady, Lara, wrote an influential school primer on the... she was from Tennessee, too. Tennessee's also where the Klan was founded. We got a great legacy from my home state. The buckle on the Bible belt, as Nashville is called. And her correspondence with the original informed her publication. She was lauded by Confederate organizations for bringing the true history of the great organization to the young people of the South and our boys and girls today, tomorrow's citizens. These citizens of tomorrow. Now, this is why this is important. Who drank from the cup of history brewed by these white women, for generations. These children in school were learning this crap, became the living monument that Southern white women sought to build. So, the point of this is they can take down all of the monuments all over, these ridiculous monuments. And, they have all of them all over Europe, too, of all these colonizers. It's like, every time I see a monument of a white dude, I was like, what did he do? Like, no, what did he really do? But that's another topic. But the living monuments, when you see all of those angry white people and from photos during like desegregation, integration in the South, and people like these little girls, these little black girls just wanting to go to school, and angry mobs of white people. Those are living monuments. I'm not trying to get them out of blame. They're like, they were just educated to do this. That's not what I'm doing here. But what I am saying is that the role of education, the role of schools, who writes these history books, the role of knowing your history or not knowing your history, knowing lies of your history, creates the foundation for people who doing that, so they can be easily manipulated by the Trumps of the world. And, probably learned that in their family already. But they don't have a chance if they're learning that in their families and then they're learning it at school. So it was saying in the 50s and 60s, there were segregationists who hoisted the Confederate flag with talks defending of states' rights and denouncing federal intervention. Members of these white citizens council. When we think about all that, we need to remember, we continue to live with the legacy of these early daughters. While the monuments they spread like seeds upon Southern soil have garnered American attention, we must not forget that their success in building the living monuments is what has shaped Southern politics and race relations for most of the past century. And this isn't just Southern politics. Look what they've done. The whole U.S. is dealing with this. Let's give credit where credit is due. These white women, these 30 who started it in Nashville and then grew a whole organization, this is their legacy. If this does not make you mad, then it should. They robbed you. If you did not learn all this, well, it's never too late. That's why I'm doing this. Before I go into some of the other members, this written in the Prospect magazine, Poisonous Legacy of Gone with the Wind. This is why that movie is so off. is because it continued that stuff. And look at this. It was written by, she said, I was a child of the Confederates. My great aunt was in this daughter's thing and used to be brought to all this stuff. And you know what? When I went on retreat with my school to some of these plantations, and I was not taught about what was really happening there. We're looking at the pretty furniture, all this crap. And that makes me so angry. And you know, I always respect a woman who, or any person who is taught to believe one thing and then is like, no. My dad was like this. I don't know, I talk a lot about my dad. I like a lot of crap about my dad. But his family took him to places with awful white men. And my dad was like, seems wrong. And became, even in high school, was fighting against that and against his own family. And then became very dedicated to do, like, and whatever. I'm not going to go into my dad. But I'm just saying, join us. If you're a white woman in my comments who gets so triggered by me talking about that, it's really lonely to fight, to resist something that will free you. You know, like your hatred and your shame not helping you. And y'all know one of the reasons why I do these movie breakdowns and TV breakdowns is I want you to see the way they've indoctrinated us. These movies, you know, all these 80s movies. And I've done some of these rom-coms, you know, and Can't Buy Me Love. And like, I break it down all the ways they are indoctrinating us to want the worst possible things for ourselves. This movie did that. This movie did that. This is all like indoctrination. Like, media is so powerful, y'all. If this is all you knew about the South and during the South, you'd be like, but it's a lie. It's a lie. And we're sympathizing with this woman. We're supposed to feel sorry for her. She says in this article, Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara are much beloved characters. They are also, as she says, homicidal white feminists with profoundly fascistic worldview. But the storytelling is like, makes her the hero. The same way, I mean, it's not the same, but what I'm saying, this is why I like Breaking Bad as much as I love the storytelling in that, the acting in that. When I go back and watch that movie, it makes me, or that show, it makes me so angry. Because I am siding with Walt, the worst person. And Jesse. I know, we love Jesse, but not anymore. I don't like him anymore. I promise I'll do that video soon. So this was about this book. It's The Wrath to Come, Gone with the Wind and the Lies America Tells. This by Sarah Churchwell. That book argues that this Pulitzer Prize book winner in 1936 about white victimhood eliminates the roots of January 6th. That book, among others, teaches the white man's country that, you know, slavery was kind of benign, you know, and that the real tragedy was the postbellum Reconstruction. Now, if you really want to understand why we are what we're facing right now, why we are, you need to learn about Reconstruction. What happened during Reconstruction, once you start to and learn it from Black people, not white people, unless they're, you know, doing intersection, like, and they're focusing on the people most harmed. Reconstruction era. She says, no book other than the Bible and no film have had a greater impact on American society than Gone with the Wind. And the woman who wrote this was a scholar and a culture critic, shows that white Americans are willing captives to their own myths. Now, one of my moderators, Leslie Witherspoon, she is going to be making content soon. She has her own YouTube page. We'll try to remember to tag her in my caption. She has a TikTok too. She talks about this a lot. This myth, the U.S., according to this book, is especially prone to cognitive dissonance as a society because the brutal realities of American life are so perpetually in conflict with its exalted ideas. And Gone with the Wind was basically giving white people permission to be racist, arguing that the Civil War wasn't really fought over slavery, but it was really about the damn money-grabbing Yankee who couldn't stand to leave the virtuous, orderly, and rich South alone. Now, y'all, when my first waitressing job when I was in high school was at Ruby Tuesdays in Nashville, and I remember serving a table, and one of the guys goes, "Well, you Yankee?" When I asked what they wanted to order, I was like, "No, why?" He's like, "You sound like a Yankee." Somehow me and my sister, I think because we were raised by the television, because Gen X, we had a single mom. My whole family has a pretty strong Southern accent. I didn't have much of one. But you know, this animosity towards the Yankees, them damn Yankees, trying to interfere with it. Daughters of Confederacy. They succeeded at this. It's not just them, okay? I'm not saying it, but The education is a really important part of a child's life. So Gone with the Wind is not a harmless romance of bygone days, but a 1,000-page novel about enslavers busily pretending that slavery doesn't matter, which is pretty much the story of American history. Now, before I get into one more article with a few more stories that make this even more like, wow. Remember, this is what this is white women, right? Like, this is what they have used white women to push this for a long time, right? Through imagery, through literally, like, we are a critical part of this entire system. And when you look at this, all right, manifest destiny, all this stuff, like, white men have always needed us desperately to be able to do all this stuff, and we have a history of going along with it. Of course, a lot of us, like, I'm not saying my grandma was literally held hostage by my grandpa, okay? But I'm just saying, the more you learn about how much white women are at the center of all of this, and how the more we educate ourselves and the more we are like, no, I am not, everyone benefits from us learning our history. So now it seems like a really important time to get on board with this, if you're not already, because this is what's happening right now. These moms of liberty, this is what they think. You know what I mean? So after I saw Teresa's video the other day, I was like, I just started Googling stuff because I was like, I gotta know more about these ladies. Like, I've learned about them for a while, but I want to, like, show some stuff so other people can learn about these daughters. So I had never heard of facingsouth.org, but they have a ton of resources on their website. I hope they're archiving all that crap. Honestly, anything that you find valuable on the internet, you should download and put on PFDs and stuff, because I wouldn't be surprised if they come off after this group. It's about these three people, but it's about Mildred, you are wrong. I don't believe in hell, but if there is one, you were there. Millie. So it talks about this number right here, 69,706,756. That's how many students were enrolled in the South's public elementary and secondary schools between 1889 and the government, and when they began counting students in 1969. So just think of that. That's almost 70 million that we know of. But like I said, my teachers grew up then. So my teachers maybe were using different textbooks, but I don't remember textbooks that were not talking about it like this. So those textbooks are still there. They were. Maybe they're not now. Now, like, we're going back to this. But the textbooks, they were subject to the alternative reality of the lost cause, a false version of U.S. history developed in response to the Reconstruction that minimized slavery's central role in the Civil War and promotes the Confederacy aim in a heroic one and glorifies and portrays the white Southerners as the victim. Now think about it. What are men doing right now with this whole, like, incel stuff? This is what happens when the oppressor, whether it's white people or men or whatever, don't want to face the truth, the reality of what they've been doing. So just like a narcissist, if you've ever dated a narcissist, this is what they do. They're always the victim. Even with, like, my ex violently, and the next time I saw him, and I was like, I was drunk, I don't remember. Okay, yeah, you still did. Well, you're the one who made me get drunk. You made me do this. Everything, even my own grape. He always turned around as him being the victim of him graping me. This is the same thing. The poisonous lost cause lessons were taught to multiple generations of Southerners to uphold the institutionalized white supremacy in the public school curriculum. Because of the data. And their most effective tool, school books, textbooks. And they stated this, the Constitution of the North Carolina chapter of these women, they said they ensured the portion of American history regarding the civil rules should be properly taught in public schools. Like, these are some of the excerpts. Trigger warning, okay? Trigger warning for, like, racial violence and words. Now, of course, they said that they want to teach people not to hate the North, but that they're just different from us. But I'm telling you, they hate Yankees. I don't even know why. They just hate them. I grew up around these people. They hate Yankees, and they literally don't know why, or they think they know why. Their goal was that the whole world will know that our cause was just and right. There's an expression often used by our people as the lost cause. Let us forget such, for it is not the truth. No, our cause was not lost because it was not wrong. President of the North Carolina chapter said that the cherished purpose of the Daughters of Confederacy was training their powers of mind, heart, and hand, render it possible for these representative Southern race to retain, for that race is and its own. Like, they spell it out, y'all. I'm just showing you this because in case you think I'm exaggerating. So their main thing was textbooks, but they did portraits, like the New York Times said. They did all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. But their primary focus was on ensuring that Southern schools used only those history books, loyal to the lost cause. And boy, did they succeed. And we can thank this much Mildred Millett for this. She loved to emphasize the victimization of the white South by the North. She defended and praised it wasn't just the Daughters of Confederacy, okay? They had things like the Rifle Club. Said the purpose of it was to combat the greatest social crime of the ages, the sudden emancipation of 4 million African slaves only incapable of... It's hard to even say this stuff out loud, y'all, because I'm not going to read all this. I'm just pause if you want to read some of this. And just so you pay attention to language, when they talk about the South, they call it her people. That's a very intentional pronoun choice, y'all. Ties into the whole white woman victimhood. They were saying, that the enslaved people should feel indebted for this civilizing and humanizing. And like y'all, this is literally what is all over the history books, right? This is what white people thought and preached, and then literally put this kind of mentality into textbooks for children. But they lay out their goals right here. Read them if you want. Trying to say that the kindness and loyalty of enslaved people. This is all gone with the wind stuff, okay? And these are the people who would guide history education for generations of Southerners. So Mildred, when she wrote these little pamphlets like this one, The Truths of History, would expand it on content, like the measuring rod, this one, by adding more perceived wrongs levied upon the South by these dang Yankees. And guess what? They're banning any books that they tried to blacklist books that offended them. Does this sound familiar? So again, working behind the scenes, just like the Liberty, whatever that group is that's doing this, to aggressively engage in local school systems and promote books that they liked and fight those that they didn't. So this is just like a case study of like the North Carolina division. Look at this. School superintendents across the state had assured her that no textbooks offensive were being used. Like, they're bullying all the people. Like, my sister and I call Southern white women the smiling bulldozers. Hey, you want to use this book? I think you should use this book. I wonder what will happen if you don't use this book. Like, the violence of Southern white women. Oh, bless your heart, all that stuff. Like, I could just see this woman just being like, hey, I think you should use this book. And then like making people use this book, threats and stuff, but just smiling the whole time. And then backstabbing, purifying the schools from objectionable book. Like the whole like white woman purity thing is at the center of anti-blackness in the South. And just all this, everything, we've been used as pawns in our purity and our to justify so much violence. And then we promote it. It was also not unusual for the Daughters of Confederacy members to actually be appointed to the state textbook commission. Oh, look at you, what are you doing? He's like, I want to go for a walk. And a lot of these commission, allowed these members to attend their meeting to promote or criticize books. Well, these women were busy, very busy. How busy are we? What are we doing? Because I promise you, the Moms for Liberty or whatever that group is, they're busy. They're real busy. So they put a lot of these national book publishers in a bind. They had the decision to either make it, if they wanted to sell the books to Southern schools, they either had to go along with the Lost Cause dogma or sell the book only to the South, or to have two versions of the same book, one with carefully worded, watered-down history for the South, and another with historical facts for someone else. Like, basically, a lot of the publishers ended up going with the latter. And then they also did this with the local. Y'all, when I learned Tennessee history, I remember my teacher, Mr. I was learning all this stuff about like Daniel Boone and all these like. Do you think I was learning anything about I was learning about these men wearing like raccoon hats with rifles. Like, I just remember being like, this is such boring stuff. What is this? But I didn't learn about anything that really happened until I went to school in Montana. They also were rejecting any books, more or less, that were written by Northerners. Anti-Northern bias was so extreme that some prominent members of the Daughters, whatever, including Millie, wanted to ban Northerners from teaching in Southern school or for serving on any school. Like, even if they moved there. No, you're one of them. Yank it. And then this example, because as Francesca Ramsey says all the time in her very popular song, Leopards, I never thought the leopards would eat my face. This is another reason why we gotta, like, stop being loyal to white men unless they are on board with deconstructing this stuff. I swear to God, there's so like, deal with your daddy issues if that's where this is coming from, some of this. So in this example, it says these public schools came from minds twisted by other pathologies in addition to. So they go into the story about Oscar W. Blacknall, who was the son of a Confederate soldier who died during the Civil War, of course. He was an amateur historian who focused on the Civil War, and his wife and daughter were both active in the UDC. In fact, his wife and his double first cousin, because we also know that incest is big in the South. And as a survivor of that, I'm telling you, these things are all tied together. So his wife, Carrie, served in the local, the chapter's president, blah, blah, blah. And their daughter, Kate, was one of the 7 children, had served as its secretary. So the whole, it's a family affair. So, like a lot, they were, avowed. And this stuff, I'm not going to read this. He wrote one thing comparing Lincoln to Satan and Napoleon. This whole pure blood, blah, blah. It's all this stuff. So this dude was super famous. They loved him. And then in July 1918, he unalived his wife and his daughter, Kate. Kate, the one working for the Daughters of the Confederacy too, before doing it to himself. Oh, a self-annihilator and his family. But look how they described, the Cleveland Star described this. No, did all this. Look, the paper notes that the friends and associates attributed this whole family and self-deletion to insanity, saying that he'd been under, business and financial pressure. Sound familiar? Rather than dropping his publication, someone who just, unalived his family member, they increased publication. And it didn't deter old Millie either. She endorsed his pamphlet after he did that to his family. So white women like this, they don't care about anybody but themselves. Even her own colleague, even a woman who was in this group with her, who died at her husband's hand. And then the daughter who was also in this group, who died at her husband's hand. Millie's like, oh yeah, he was right. They still embrace this dude today. So it goes in about, banning books, targeting teachers, which is what they've been doing and are going to do more of now. They are getting people, forcing them to resign. There's a whole story here. Pause if you want to read it. Resisting integration? Shocker. So even when they weren't able to do all this crap, segregationist politicians picked up where the Daughters left off and continued to push this crap in school curriculum in general public domain, especially as the civil rights movement gained traction in the 50s. They dug in even more. 1957, Virginia commissioned a whole slew of these lost cause textbooks. So they have an expert from a history book, from a 4th grade history book from Virginia history from back then. Oh, the enslaved people were generally happy. They are cheerful manner, making a living for themselves and for those who they were. Plentiful. Look, they had all this food, adequate clothing, a warm cabin, teaching children this. The book said, both the enslaved and the master understood the bondage. They knew, there's nothing evil, no bad. Y'all, this is all lies. And it was way better than being in Africa. Y'all, children's textbook for generations. They should be thankful. No, the enslaved, they were the happiest people on the whole planet because they don't have to worry about food or housing or clothes. It would be well into the 1970s before Virginia phased these books out. And I was born in 77. I don't remember necessarily reading this, but I am telling you, this is the sentiments that my generation was taught in a lot of these schools. They talk about Tennessee doing it too. Up until 1980, Mississippi's public schools used the lost cause textbooks exclusively, and it took a federal court to order them to make them stop. But even if you take the books out of the classroom, the people teaching it are still going to teach this until they are phased out or whatever. Ugh. And then it talks about the lost cause resurgence, this crap that went on in Texas in 2010. Like, this stuff has been resurging. For instance, it would be 2018 before Texas standards was revised. They now blame equally on the. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into all this, but basically they're giving these examples of how, these are the living memorial. All these kids who were taught this, all these teachers who continue to teach it, even when the federal government said you can't use these books anymore, it's still there. And a Pew Research poll in 2011 found that 48% of Americans thought the conflict was mainly the states' rights, including 60% of those under the age of 30. Only 38% thought the Civil War was primarily about. In 2018, the Southern Poverty Law Center found that the students' lack of knowledge about this is a critical role in shaping the United States and how it continues to affect society today. Another thing, you know how a lot of people are like, oh, use this whole indentured servants versus, it's like they are different. A lot of times people are like, well, my ancestors were Irish and yeah, la la la. Like, I'm telling you, these books were also peddling that stuff. They were also peddling all of these really racist cartoons and stuff. There's a whole part in this. This is a great article about indentured versus enslaved. So this was another one of the women responsible for a lot of this. Caroline, this woman too. I could talk for hours about this, y'all, because this is a big part of why we are seeing what we're seeing now. It's a big part of why we have to have a Black History Month, because a group of white women and other people too, not just white women, but a lot of white people, but a lot of them were white women, were real busy, real active in their local communities, making sure that history was rewritten as Southern white people, especially rich Southern white people who owned people, as the victims of the Yankees. And they were good people doing this benevolent thing. Those white women are responsible for that narrative being pushed. So now you know. If you didn't already know that, there are a lot of people who watch my stuff and knew all this, obviously. But for anyone who didn't, please go read as much as you can during Black History Month, but also all the time, because I really didn't understand this country, my country, or even what's happening in the world until I read it from people who have been at the center of its brutality since the beginning of our country's existence. And if you feel helpless and frustrated, get active in your local community, pushing back against these other people who are real busy. This didn't happen overnight. This was a long effort, being consistent and dedicated. Well, to complete that. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if you read, if these were peddled in your classroom. And if you're not in the U.S., like what? I'm telling you, I swear, a lot of times people outside the U.S. learn way more about our history than we do. And that's intentional too. Of course, they may not talk about their own histories, honestly. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. And if you can, join my Patreon. Even if you can't afford a tier, there's a free tier just so that you find out about my work and keep track of me. And let me know if you heard the comment song. Please come to my live on February 2nd with Evan. If you're part of those tiers on the Patreon, it's going to be awesome. Et voila! Comment song, little Melanie at the zoo. I got bit by an ostrich or whatever that thing is with the big feathers. And they gave me an ostrich feather. Anyway, little Melanie went to Waffle House a lot. Brownie Melanie sold all kinds of cookies. Just found all these photos the other day. And this little Melanie wanted a dump truck. Tonka dump truck, got baby stuff and Barbies and other stuff. But I really was tomboy at heart. Little Melanie loves sports and getting dirty, little Melanie. See, you gotta look back at your childhood and all stuff, including history. Anyway, little Melanie, look at those overalls. Little Melanie with a little umbrella. I don't know why I'm showing this, just cause
Whatever. Anyway, look at these. Y'all wear these really crazy little beaded necklaces. Remember that in the 80s? Big thing in the 80s while I was getting miseducated by the crap history. Santa Claus, you're creepy looking and I'm a little suspicious. Little Melanie protected by my big sister and my best friend, little Melanie with big sister. Clown, 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 always a clown. I'm still a clown, I guess. Anyway, hope you like this random comment song. If you're new here, I do a random comment song just because it's fun and gives you time to tap, tap, tap something. Did you hear Little Melanie comment song?